Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I am covering hard wearing and incredibly durable bags. I'm splitting the video into two parts. So the first part I'm talking a little bit about materials, what to look out for and perhaps what to avoid as well. And then in the second part of the video, which is the main part, I'm covering particular bag styles and bag brands which are known for their durability, using bags that I already own in my collection as examples, and I'm only picking styles which have really impressed me with their durability and just how incredibly hard wearing they are. So I hope you guys enjoy this and let's get started. So in terms of the most durable leather you can buy, it is usually a grained or a pebbled leather, and for me the most classic example of that is the Chanel caviar leather. Caviar is just the name that Chanel uses to describe their particular kind of grain leather, but you can find this type of finish and texture on many other bags from many other bag brands, so it isn't specific to Chanel, it's just what they call it. But it is an incredibly hard wearing material. It is just very robust, and even though you will always see wear and tear if you've used the bag as much as I have, it is still very, very hard wearing, and much more so than their lambskin, for example. And you can find other examples of this kind of material in Saint Laurent. There are many other bags that have that kind of grained leather, but it's always much more hard wearing than a smooth or a shiny leather in my experience. Saffiano leather is another example of leather which is known for being very, very durable, but I think Saffiano in particular is a good example of there being exceptions to every rule, because I've certainly had mixed experiences with my Saffiano bags, and a lot of brands are known for using Saffiano leather. Prada is very famous for it, as is Michael Kors, and what Saffiano refers to is the particular texture that's embossed onto the leather, and it's usually a cross-hatch texture, and it's stamped onto the leather, and then it's usually coated with a wax seal, and that's what creates that kind of grainy texture that you feel. But even though I've had quite good experiences with this particular Prada bag, I have owned other styles in Prada which have also been Saffiano leather, and they've not worn very well at all. And it's usually when a bag has very, very strong edges and sharp corners that I begin to see wear very quickly on the corners and edges. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. Even though it is known for being quite robust leather, there are always exceptions. And speaking of exceptions to every rule, I also wanted to talk about lambskin and the variation that you can find within the lambskin category, because not all lambskin is created equal, and you can find much harder wearing lambskin as well as very, very delicate lambskin. So I have three examples here, and these are what I consider to be kind of best, medium and worst in terms of how hard wearing they are. In terms of worst, I do have my mini lady deal here, which is not only lambskin but it also has a pearly finish, and usually whenever there's kind of an iridescent finish, they're always a lot more susceptible to wear and tear. This one is no exception to that. It is a very, very delicate bag, and even when I first unboxed it, I did see it had a dent right there on the bottom, and it's just generally very, very susceptible to wear and tear, scratch the marks and that sort of thing. Chanel is another brand which is known for its use of lambskin, but there is a ton of variation even within Chanel's lambskin. They have many different finishes, and even across the kind of years you will see a vast difference. I am going to touch upon vintage lambskin later, but certainly Chanel lambskin can be quite delicate, but you can also find Chanel lambskin which is a little bit more robust as well. This one I would say is kind of medium in terms of the scale. You know, it does show scratches and it does have some wrinkling on the edges, but generally I have been able to buff other marks out. So for me, this is kind of an in-between one, and there is definitely a lot of variation within Chanel. And my example for quite a robust lambskin is my Saint Laurent Lulu Puffer, which is the softest material. It's incredibly soft and smushy leather, but at the same time, it's actually very, very hard wearing and durable. I've used this bag an absolute ton since I got it last year, and it's done so well. I could see absolutely no marks on it at all, and it's just been incredible. So just because a material has a particular reputation for being very delicate doesn't mean that every single bag that has that material will also be very, very fragile, and the Saint Laurent Lulu Puffer is a great example of that. Two other things that you might want to consider if durability is at the top of your priority list. The first one is the thickness of the leather. There can be massive variation here, and it really does have a big impact in terms of how well your bag will wear. If the leather is too soft, then it will be much more susceptible to showing scratches and dents and just general wear, whereas if you get a much thicker leather, it will be much more robust and therefore won't show wear anywhere near as quickly. And the second thing to consider is the size of the bag and the material that you're planning on getting in. And again, there are exceptions to every rule. I just mentioned my Saint Laurent Lulu Puffer, but if I'm talking Chanel bags here, for me, lambskin is totally fine if I'm going to use it for an occasional bag, for a mini bag or a very, very small SLG. But generally speaking, the bigger the surface area, the quicker it will show wear, and that's particularly true if you get it in lambskin. The very first Chanel bag that I bought from the boutique was a maxi size, which is the largest flap they do, and I got it in lambskin. I used it every single day for a couple of months and it showed wear incredibly quickly. By the end of the second month, there was wear all along the corners and all along the edges as well, and it was just devastating to me because it was such an expensive bag. So I did end up selling that and I went for a caviar jumbo instead, which is the same one that I still have to this day. So keep that in mind. I would never in a million years go for another Chanel maxi in lambskin. It showed wear way too quickly, whereas something like this, which is a lot smaller, is generally going to fare a lot better. So first up on my list of very, very durable bags that I own is my Chanel Caviar Jumbo, and this really goes for every single caviar bag I have. I've already spoken about this in this video, so I'm going to only mention this one very briefly, but I've had it almost 9 years, I think. It's been very durable. It is showing wear, but I've used this bag a ton. It's been caught in the rain. It's just done incredibly, incredibly well. There are differences with the different types of caviar leather. Chanel never like to make it easy, but you can get matte caviar, you can get shiny caviar. There is a lot of difference. Mine is just the general kind of shiny caviar, and in my experience that has been the most hard wearing. And as you can see, even though when you look close up there are little bits of wear and tear, it generally looks very, very good for its age. And speaking of Chanel, I wanted to talk about vintage Chanel, and I don't own too many pieces. This is pretty much my only piece, but I wanted to cover it because I always hear a lot of discussion about how vintage Chanel is supposed to be much better quality than what you can buy in store. I do think there is some truth in that, and certainly there are some tangible aspects, like, you know, the hardware used to be gold plated and now it's just gold colored. But in terms of the leather, I think that there are a lot of different factors at play, and I remember reading an interview, I think it was with one of the designers at Salvatore Ferragamo, and they were explaining why their shoes are less comfortable than they used to be because they have changed the rules about how they're allowed to treat the leather, and so just by factors completely outside their control, their shoes are a little bit less comfortable than they used to be because their leather is a little bit harder. I think there could be elements like that at play with Chanel, but I'm sure the fact that they are producing many more bags than they used to also comes into play as well. But generally speaking, Chanel Vintage is very, very hard wearing. This one is many years old. I don't know exactly how old. It's one I got last year, and I imagine it's seen a good life, but at the same time, it's shown very, very little wear considering, you know, it's in pretty good nick. I have used this for travel and I don't need to baby at all. It's just a very, very robust bag. So I've been really pleased with it, and vintage Chanel is always a really nice way to go. If you do want something robust, you wanted lambskin, but you wanted something a little bit more durable, and even if you wanted to save some money as well, they're often a lot cheaper than what you can buy in store. They can be a really, really good option. My next durable bag pick is my Saint Laurent wallet on a chain, which is just so hard wearing, and I have a few different bags with this type of material as well, so this one is just kind of representative, but it's a great choice, especially if you do want something which is very kind of carefree. You can use it for events, you just wipe it clean. I've used this so many times and it's just done so well, and it does have that kind of pebbled grain texture, which even if you scratch it, you know, absolutely nothing happens, and it's just a really, really easygoing bag. I've only had very good experiences with Saint Laurent. I've heard kind of mixed things from other people, but I can only go from my own experience, and for me, I never have any hesitancy with their bags because they have proven to be so durable for me. My next bag pick is my Senreve Mini Maestro, and much like my Saint Laurent bag, this one is kind of representative because most of my Senreve styles are made of the same kind of grain leather, and it's just so incredibly durable and hard wearing. For me, this is just the bag that doesn't quit. And if you remember what I said earlier about the thickness of the leather really coming into play, I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but it is an incredibly thick leather, and that really does help in terms of the durability. It's just very immune to kind of scratches and marks, and I've used this one a fair amount and literally I cannot see a single bit of wear and tear on it. It does help that it does have feet as well, which I do always like, but it's just done incredibly well, and that's true of all the Senreve styles I have, which is why it makes for a very, very good work bag. You know, it's just a grab and go style, and it's something that you're not gonna have to freak out if it's raining outside. You know, they're scratch proof, they are just wipe clean, and it's just a style that you'll be able to use for years and years because it will just hold up and look the same for so long. So I'm always a huge fan. Their leather quality is really incredible and what I think is their USP. My one has just done very well, and they're just in general very, very hard wearing and durable. My next durable bag pick is my Mulberry Bayswater, and I talked about Mulberry a little bit before, but I'm always so impressed with the quality of the bags, and you can really feel it when you pick one up. And again, going back to the thickness of the leather coming into play, the Mulberry leather is usually very, very thick. I would say that, again, exceptions to every rule, the Mulberry Lily that I have is a thinner leather, so I don't think it's standard across all of their bags, and I do feel like that one might not hold its shape quite as well. But certainly the zipped Bayswater tote that I have, it's a very thick leather, it's done incredibly well, and again, this one has shown absolutely no signs of wear and tear, and this has been a pretty constant go-to for me. It's just done really, really well. This one, it does have that pebbled grain texture as well, but it doesn't feel overly shiny, so that's going to be a kind of take it or leave it thing, I think, for most people. But I really love the look. I love the fact that they don't seem to sacrifice any kind of luxe qualities for the durability, and it's just a very, very long-lasting bag. So I'm a huge fan of Mulberry. I do think that they're an underrated one in the luxury bag world, and this one in particular has just done incredibly well for me. And now for a slightly cheaper price point, but I wanted to mention Tory Burch Totes, which for me are just such extraordinary value because of the quality that you get with them. And you know, they're not perfect, no bags are, and you know, any bag, it doesn't matter how robust the material is, if you use it every single day, then you will begin to see signs of wear. But considering how much I use and abuse my Tory Burch Totes, they always do very, very well. And I've used this tote an absolute ton. And yes, you can see little signs of wear on the corner, but considering how much I've used it, it's done very well. And I feel like I can always rely on Tory Burch just to have really amazing quality, especially for the price. And that's why they're just always a favorite for me. You know, I think they look very understated, but they're also very durable, and I don't have to stress about them getting damaged, especially if I'm lugging around, you know, my laptop and documents and things like that. They're just always a very, very solid go-to, which I know I can rely on for good quality and just a long wearing durability. Next up is my Celine Nano, and I can't speak for other styles within Celine's range. This is the only Celine bag that I have, but I have been super impressed with my Nano. I actually bought this pre-loved, so it is quite a few years old, and I myself have used this a very fair amount. This was my go-to travel bag for a while, and it's just done incredibly well. There is hardly any wear and tear on it at all. You know, looking at the corners and the edges, which is always the first place I look at when looking for wear and tear, and there is absolutely nothing to report. No scratches, it is pretty white clean, and mine is in the smooth leather, so I can't speak for the grained leather, but it's held its shape beautifully. Doesn't show many scratches or marks, no dents, just such a great little bag, and even after all these years it still looks pretty much good as new, so very, very impressed with it. It's just very, very hard wearing. And I'm rounding off my video with two last picks, both of which are canvas. First up is my Gucci Dionysus, which even though you do have bits of suede, which isn't the most durable material in the world, the canvas bit in particular is incredibly hardy and durable. You do just have this kind of coating on top, so I don't know if you'll be able to hear that, but it's very kind of scratch proof. You're not gonna have to worry about little scratches and dents and things like that. White clean as well, and just an easy one to grab and go. And regardless of whether you like this particular design, I know they do many other styles with the canvas, it is a very, very safe choice if you do want something that you're just not going to have to fuss and fret over, which is still a very, very luxurious bag. I'm a huge fan. I love the fact that, you know, if it is raining, I don't really have to freak out. Even the suede hasn't done too badly at all. You know, there are only a few little bits here and there, but overall this bag has just been wonderful in terms of wear and tear, and it's just a very, very carefree style. And then finally, for my very last durable bag pick, I do have my Louis Vuitton Neverfull here, and again, this is representative, I think, pretty much any style that you get from Louis Vuitton, which does have the canvas, and that includes both bags and SLGs. Generally speaking, they will be very, very durable. My Neverfull is the best example of this, and I'm not really counting here the Vachetta because the Vachetta has seen better days, I'm gonna admit, and this bag has been through the walls. You know, I've used this thousands of times. I don't think that's an exaggeration. Like, it's been a go-to for me for a very, very long time. It's held an extreme amount of weight and there's like nothing wrong with the stitching. So even though the leather doesn't look amazing anymore, it's still held up pretty well, all things considered. But the canvas in particular is just insane. It's so hard wearing. I do think I spotted one little bit of wear right there, but honestly, for the amount of use, I'm surprised there isn't way more. It's done incredibly well. Again, wipe clean, so easy to care for. Just wipe it down if you do get anything on it. You don't have to worry about scratches or marks. And I just always love LV canvas for that reason. So this would probably, if I was going to rank all of my bags, this would probably be #1 in terms of durability. It's just amazing and will forever have my devotion because of how carefree it is. So that is it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, you found it useful. If you have any questions for me, then leave me a comment down below and let me know what your most durable and hard wearing bag is down below in the comment section. I would love to hear about it. I'm sure other people would as well. If you enjoyed the video, please do give us a thumbs up, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next one. Bye, guys.